Hello and welcome again to Immigration News and Views. My name is David Nachman. I'm one of the managing attorneys at the NPZ Nachman Fawani Czech Law Group with offices in northern New Jersey, New York City, and we also have affiliated offices in Canada and also in Mumbai, India. So today I have with me Felicia Zeidman, who is my colleague here in the office, who helps us with I-9 audits and investigations, which is not just I-9 audits and investigations. It actually is a broader area which is referred to as employment verification and employer sanctions. But basically what it has to do with is employers who are doing I-9 documents. And one of the reasons why we wanted to come back to you today on the I-9 issue, we have several videos, I believe, that have been posted in the past by Felicia and I. We've done a couple of videos, but there's some new burgeoning information that we wanted to bring to your attention. So Felicia, do you want to tell the viewing audience a little bit about this new change?
Sure, thank you.
Thanks.
There is, on our I-9 forms, there is a tendency by people who have efficient hiring practices to pre-populate the I-9 as they pre-populate every I-9, every type of form, that has to do with hiring. And that is an efficiency in hiring if you have such computer programs in your office. However, pre-population of the I-9 forms is not as simple as it sounds. There have been various questions put to the Immigration and Customs Enforcement authorities to determine whether pre-population was acceptable. And in the past, there has been a blanket no on that answer. However,
around April when the new form came out, they said blanket no pre-population, right?
Right. So what's happened now is that there's been an update where the ICE has indicated that it's not taking a position on pre-population. So we just wanted to bring this update over to your attention so that you could make decisions about pre-population, because we've gone into a bit of a gray zone, I would say, with pre-population.
Absolutely, it's a little bit of a gray area. And Felicia and I were discussing before this filming a little bit about what the underlying policy or the nuts and bolts behind this might be. And we think that maybe what happened was back in April, when they originally came out with the new I-9 form, there was this concern that pre-population would thrust violations upon either the employees or even the employers, because the pre-population, which was happening through these electronic I-9 programs, was putting information in that people maybe just became sort of lazy and wouldn't double check to see that the information is correct. And if that happens, then obviously when the employer goes to check Section 1 of the I-9, obviously when an employer signs off on the I-9, they're certifying to the validity of the information in Section 1. So if there's a pre-population going on, then when they sign that document, they're certifying to it.
Well, I agree with what David's saying, because I'm thinking about the fact that when I look at documents that are pre-populated, I don't read them so carefully, even with regard to my own information. However, we have to assume that human resources officials are careful, number one.
Right.
Number two, if they're pre-populating other hiring forms, is the same problem not going to affect other hiring forms? Is the I-9 form, I guess the I-9 form is considered a critical form by the government and certainly has to be monitored correctly, but is pre-population in general a danger that the HR offices are looking out for?
That's a great point. Actually, that's a really super point that you're making about the HR, because a lot of the data that is pre-populating an electronic program, for example, and I'm not advocating that anyone of our viewers use it, I just happen to know that many of our clients do use a software program called PeopleSoft. PeopleSoft is a program which populates all of the forms across the board. So if there is inaccurate data that's going into one particular form, then obviously that pre-populated information will find its way into the I-9. And that could be the reason why back in April ICE was taking the position that they were, because they were trying to tell employers, be really conservative, do the I-9 as a separate standalone process, and don't rely upon information that's utilized in other forms to pre-populate the I-9 form.
And that's something that we still see is prevalent in the way that ICE directs employers as to how to deal with their I-9s. The background documentation or the supporting documentation to the I-9 form has to be with the I-9 form itself. Even if you're collecting it for other forms that you might be filling out, there has to be a separate photocopy and a separate set of documents that are attached to the I-9. And that is a testament to how the government feels about the I-9 form, and that it is a standalone form that has to be monitored very carefully. And something I'd like to add here is that even if we've gone out of the absolute prohibition and into the gray zone of maybe for pre-population, or we take no position, as ICE is saying now, for pre-population, I think that because we're seeing this flip-flop, in 6 months, who's to say we're not going to see another flip-flop? And then you're not going to be allowed to pre-populate.
Absolutely, and again, I think, Felicia, you're making an excellent point to our viewers, and that is that many of them, if they haven't gleaned this already from our prior videos, need to know that this is definitely a dynamic area. And it's a burgeoning area where information is coming out at a fairly rapid pace from the liaison, from AILA liaison, and they're interfacing with the worksite enforcement representatives on a regular basis. So as this information comes out, we're trying to give it to you, obviously, because you're going to utilize this on a day-to-day basis, but this information can and probably will change.
So, I think that if somebody were to ask me, I would say be conservative. I mean, I'm putting it out there. I would say
Absolutely.
Be conservative about it. However, you should know that ICE is currently taking no position on pre-population, as opposed to the fact that in the past they've said there is an absolute blanket no. So that's where we stand on that.
Excellent. And as a quick aside, I will remind our viewers who are using electronic I-9 programs to ensure that those I-9 programs are in compliance with the federal regulations. There are regulations that specifically deal with the I-9 process, so definitely take a look at those. If you need copies of those regulations, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to provide that guidance to you.
Great.
So with that, we'd like to thank you very much for tuning in. Felicia, thank you so much for helping me to bring this information to our viewers. We look forward to continuing to bring you new and burgeoning information in the employment verification and employer sanction arenas. Thanks so much for being with us today. Bye now.
Bye-bye.